again, it relates to power plant security, and it relates to new requirements that have really come in since 9/11. And it looks to us that the condition would require either a security guard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or for plant operation personnel to be on site all the time, and in addition to that, have perimeter security. The concerns that we have with that are a couple, and I think they're probably worth discussing here at the workshop. One is that as a P plant, really it isn't staffed full time. You know, we have basically an 8 to 5 shift, 5 days a week. So you know, the requirement for a security guard 24 hours a day isn't would be an added burden. The other aspect of, and then we've had the perimeter security is sometimes problematic, and because you get a lot of false alarms with those systems sometimes. We're just wondering if it would be very workable in an urban area like this where there's a lot of activity. It's also next to the open space where you have bird and wildlife activity. There are a lot of false alarms. I think in some cases, and I'm sure you know more about this than me as you've monitored these cases, fire departments simply get tired of responding to false alarms, and the system doesn't work as well.
So do the police departments.
Yeah, or the police department. So just wondering what, again, it's a peaking power plant, and maybe it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of condition here, as I guess is our thought.
Right. Well, let me explain. The requirement here, which is number 8 in condition of certification 8, talks about having guards or personnel and a perimeter breach detection, so to warn if somebody hops the fence or cuts through the fence. In the past, Doug, you're quite right. Some of the perimeter breach detections have been tripwires, where even if a newspaper blows against it, you get a false positive. I know of a power plant in Sacramento where the drug dealers were leaning up against the fence, and it generated many false alarms. So there are perimeter breach detection methods that are internal as opposed to right at the fence or external to the perimeter fence. And those are what I have in mind. There's also what we term virtual breach detection, which is a motion detection system hooked up to your closed circuit TV. And I had a vendor come to my office and demonstrate this, and it has infrared capability for 24/7 service. The cameras would be what we call PTZ, pan, tilt, and zoom. And you could set up a virtual breach detection inside your perimeter such that if there's movement, it would trigger an alarm. The computer software program would sense that there's movement, would trigger an alarm. Somebody would be able to actually look then at the TV monitor and see what it was, whether it was something blowing in the wind or there was somebody that had breached the perimeter. What we're getting at here is that I recognize that this is a peaker plant, and it's not so much that I feel that there is a great risk of a terrorist attacking the plant, but rather someone may be intent on stealing something. We had an incident in San Francisco Bay the other day where thieves broke into a secure area where hazardous materials tanks existed and took off the brass valves, trying to sell the brass and make some money, on a tank containing thousands of gallons of toluene, which then spilled into a little creek and then spilled into the bay. The local neighbors had to shelter in place. There were several birds and other wildlife that died. And we're talking about maybe a $5 or $10 brass valve. It's that sort of thing that we take seriously at the Energy Commission. And we do have some homegrown terrorists in California that have made some attempts on some power plants, and they've been thwarted, thank goodness. So, with that in mind, seeing as how this is a peaker, you can use the model of other peakers that I have visited around the state that have remote detection. You can be in a central office, it could be literally miles away, where they can view the closed circuit TV and the virtual breach detection if you choose to put that in. You can also put in passive infrared, which would be placed about 3 to 4 feet inside your perimeter. There's also microwave technology as well, but I like the passive infrared and the virtual breach detection. These are cost effective. You don't have a lot of fence line here, and you can view it from a remote location. And if you have at least a guard or a staffer or a remote location viewing or listening for an alarm 24/7, that would satisfy this requirement. So I can change the wording here to put in that or viewable at a remote location, and then you can notify the authorities at that point to respond. But I know you want to keep this as secure as possible, so do we. There are minimal security requirements that came down from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security through the Department of Energy to the North America Electrical Reliability Council. And if you institute the baseline, security will be handled.